Good evening and welcome to Look North, our top story tonight. 7 years after Grenfell, residents here in this region are still waiting for their homes to be made safe.
It's not clear yet why a building can be such high risk, and yet the people who are responsible for putting that right are dragging their heels and putting it off and causing more heartache, more worry, more stress and more bills for people like me every day.
We'll ask what the government is doing to speed up the backlog of remedial work. Also tonight, a 13-year-old who threw fireworks and rocks at police during disorder in Rotherham is sentenced today. Unlocking investment in Yorkshire. The region's mayor's on a mission to inject money into the local economy. And meet the high flyer from Harrogate, giving former servicemen and women a much needed lift.
Well, it's been a difficult job, but I have found some blue sky. This was Pateley Bridge this morning before all parts of the region turned cloudy. It looks quite wet this evening too, but what about the next few days? Join me for that detailed forecast.
Hello, thank you for your company this Thursday evening. First tonight, it's been more than 7 years since the Grenfell Tower fire in London, which killed 72 people. Yet the repercussions are still being felt across the country. In the immediate aftermath of Grenfell, up to 30 high-rise buildings in our region were identified as having dangerous ACM cladding on them. That's the type of cladding that was central to the disaster at Grenfell. The latest government figures show that as of July, up to 5 high-rise buildings in our region still have ACM cladding. These buildings are found only in Sheffield, and the government says work is continuing to remove that cladding. Building regulations on high-rise flats were changed as a result of the tragedy, expanding the number of buildings that now are deemed to be unsafe for their residents. Since those changes, we know that at least 300 residential buildings across Yorkshire didn't meet the expected safety standard and are being monitored by the government. Of those 300 buildings, less than half have completed remediation work needed to make them safe. Michelle Lyons has been to visit 2 leaseholders in Leeds who've been fighting to make their flats safe.
The cladding crisis has taken its toll on thousands of people's lives, both financially and emotionally. Rachel Loftus moved into her flat in Leeds city centre in 2007, totally unaware of the hazard the building posed. It wasn't until building checks were carried out in the wake of the Grenfell fire that the shocking truth was revealed.
So alongside timber cladding on the outside of the building, we've also been told that this polycarbonate sheeting should never have been used on a residential building because it's likely to melt if the temperature got very high. And then the other problem is that this is the insulation that's used behind the outer wall of our building, and that's basically just polystyrene, so that also would melt and that should be quite toxic in the event of a fire.
At the time, the building was deemed so unsafe it had to have security staff on site night and day at a monthly cost of over £800 per resident. Now, new fire alarms have been fitted.
One of the hardest things to take actually is that sense of urgency that there was in January 2020, that things were so bad, it was so risky, that we needed to have immediate action. That has just completely dissipated now. We've barely heard from our freeholders in the last couple of years, only for them to send bills out to us. That's the only thing they do now. It's not clear yet why a building can be such high risk, and yet the people who are responsible for putting that right are dragging their heels and putting it off and causing more heartache, more worry, more stress and more bills for people like me every day.
Rachel is a member of the Leeds Cladding Scandal campaign group, and with the support of the Ministry of Housing, she and her neighbours took the owners of their building to court, as new legislation states the owners are responsible for its safety. But work isn't expected to begin until November next year. Just down the road, Emily has been fighting a similar battle with the owners of her building. She's experienced severe anxiety at times, living with the knowledge her flat isn't safe. Work is about to begin on her block of flats, and she's hoping this will put an end to her ordeal.
So, as you can see, obviously we've got the scaffolding outside, and it means that I can't even get onto my balcony at the moment. They've had to shut it off while they do the works, and it's going to be that way for still about a year, and I've already had it shut off for about a month, obviously during kind of the peak of summer, so it's been really, really hot.
Work on Emily's building is expected to last over a year, but she says it'll be worth it.
I'm lucky that my building is having its work starting now, whereas there are so many leaseholders across the building who are still trapped in their flats with no sign of when this is going to start. But I do hope that this is the beginning of the end of what has been a very traumatic 5 years.
Last year, the government made major developers sign contracts to address fire safety issues in their buildings over 5 stories high. And funding has been provided to replace unsafe cladding. But still, many developers haven't started work yet, leaving residents like Rachel with the stress of living in an unsafe building and paying inflated insurance bills. Michelle Lyons, BBC Look North, Leeds.
Well, Rachel's developers Grade Yard told us that they are currently progressing through their remediation programme to improve the safety of the residents across the UK. They say works on Rachel's building will be completed by November 2026, which they say is reasonable given the nature and complexity of the works in question. Well, today the inquiry report was published saying that successive governments missed opportunities to act. Earlier I spoke to Sheffield MP Clive Betts, who was the former chair of the government's Housing Committee and followed the Grenfell disaster closely. With the residents here still in Yorkshire waiting for cladding to be removed, I began by asking if politicians had been dragging their feet.
There has been action taken by the previous government in terms of providing some money towards removing dangerous cladding and getting developers to contribute towards the costs as well. Clearly, then there have been developers and owners of buildings who have tried to avoid the financial implications of the buildings that they wrongly and inadequately built. So there needs to be more pressure on them, and I think the Prime Minister today said government now will take a more active interest in looking at those blocks of flats in particular which have not had their cladding removed, have not had building safety work done, and I think it's up to government now to put pressure on owners, developers of these buildings to make sure the work is done in a much more rapid and effective way. It's absolutely disgraceful that people are living in buildings which are potentially unsafe. That's terrible for the mental health of those people, and of course many of them are stuck in buildings they want to move on from but can't sell.
Clive, campaigners have called on Labour to protect leaseholders from incurring any costs related to remedial works. Is that something you think the government can commit to?
I would hope so. I think leaseholders shouldn't have to bear the costs, but I'd also say neither should the tenants of rented properties like those at Grenfell. Government has to address the fact that previously tenants of rented properties didn't get the same sort of help. I think all householders need help from government to make sure they aren't discriminated against or have enormous costs put on them through no fault of their own.
What's your message to those people living in buildings where they suspect the cladding is defective and are concerned about their safety?
What I do is go to your Member of Parliament and MPs can get direct access to the experts in the Housing and Communities Department, and those experts can help identifying whether the buildings are at risk and can help with putting pressure on the owners and developers. That I think is a good first step to do to make sure you get the right advice, and that is something that government officials are there to do. Access that through your Member of Parliament.
OK, Clive Betts, many thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
You're watching Wednesday's Look North, still to come on tonight's programme. Tomorrow is the day for cycling fans. Find out where in South Yorkshire you can see some of the world's best riders. Next tonight, a 13-year-old boy who threw fireworks at police officers during rioting in Rotherham last month has been sentenced at Sheffield Youth Court. He'd been involved in large-scale violence outside the Holiday Inn Express at Mambers, where around 200 asylum seekers were housed at the time. The teenager is one of the youngest to be sentenced. Ollie Constable has the details.
In the week when many children are heading back to school, Some have started it by coming here, to the youth court in Sheffield. A number of them have already admitted to spending parts of their 6 weeks holiday at a riot outside the Holiday Inn Express in Manvers on the 4th of August. Today, they appeared here. A 13-year-old, who we can't name because of his young age, previously admitted violent disorder. The court heard how he threw rocks and fireworks at police. They were told anything he could grab, he threw. In a report, he told probation officers he found it exciting. The judge said he willingly and enthusiastically took part in the disorder. He was told to pay a £26 surcharge and was sentenced to a 12-month referral order. That's a community sentence designed to help rehabilitate rather than punish. Also appearing today were two youths aged 16 and 17. They were accused of taking part in violent disorder, something they both pleaded guilty to. They were bailed, with sentencing set to take place next month. Ollie Constable, BBC Look North in Sheffield.
OK, let's get some news in brief now. An inquest into the deaths of a mother and her 3 children after a house fire in Bradford has been suspended while criminal court cases are ongoing. 29-year-old Bryony Gorwith and her 3 young children died after a fire on Westbury Road in the city on the 21st of August. The coroner suspended the inquest following a brief hearing this morning at Bradford Coroner's Court. A detective inspector told the inquest that a male suspect was removed from the property at the time of the incident, remains in a critical condition in hospital. A man who claimed to be Ben Needham, who went missing as a toddler 3 decades ago, has been disproved by a DNA test. Ben Needham was from Sheffield and was 21 months old when he vanished from a farmhouse his grandfather was renovating in Coss 33 years ago. In July, South Yorkshire Police said a man had come forward claiming to be Ben and had taken a DNA test. However, a Force spokesperson confirmed his DNA did not match. The new MP for York Outer has questioned the Prime Minister on housing issues in York. Speaking during Prime Minister's questions, Luke Charters reminded Sir Keir Starmer of his recent visit to the Germany Beck development of 600 homes in Fulford, which he says has faced long delays. He asked if the government would speed up the planning process and help build more homes in the city. This was the Prime Minister's response.
Yes, I remember that visit well and was struck by the delays in planning because the system was broken by the previous government. We will deliver 1.5 million new homes, Mr Speaker, drive economic growth and fulfil the dream of home ownership, shattered for 14 years under the former government. And that means changing the planning rules, a tough decision they were not prepared to make that happen and to grow our economy. Thank you.
Next tonight, all 8 northern mayors have been meeting in York today to set out their plans to work together to improve the north over the next 25 years. The group, including Tracy Brabin, Oliver Coppard and David Scaife, say it's the start of a new dawn and said working together could grow the northern economy by £118 billion over the next 25 years. Olivia Richwald was there.
Well, the 8 elected mayors from across the north have spent the day here in York discussing how they can boost the economy over the next 25 years. And if you're thinking that sounds like a big topic, you'd be right. So we didn't get very much detail on how they're going to do that. It was more like a statement of ambition. They promised to work together and to grow the economy by a massive £18 billion by 2050. Well, they're lined up right here to deliver their manifesto launch, with Tracy Brabin, the West Yorkshire Mayor, saying it was the dawn of a new era. Here are some headlines from that manifesto document. Well, the mayors want to ensure transport is improved. That was one of their big priorities. And as part of that, they want to ensure that the high-speed rail link from east to west across the Pennines, Northern Powerhouse Rail it's sometimes called, well, they want to ensure that happens, and they want to work together to collectively push for the money from the government to make that happen. No timescales on that, of course. They also want to develop the net zero carbon economy and create more green jobs and more jobs in areas like life sciences. And they also are going to establish a new group called One Creative North. And the idea of that is to nurture creative talent and boost the creative industries. Well, here's what the 3 Yorkshire mayors said to me after the manifesto launch.
The prize is huge because we have data and evidence that shows that if you work collaboratively in the north, you can grow the economy by 100 billion by 2050, unlocking 1 million jobs.
Well, transport is absolutely fundamental to the vision that I have for South Yorkshire, and I know other mayors across the north have, for how we're going to connect up our communities and make sure that everybody has opportunity. Investment in the north, in transport in particular, has been hugely underpowered. We need to see that investment, but we also need to see different approaches. The bus reform that we've seen in Manchester has led the way. We are investing in our transport network, in the tram network in South Yorkshire. We've got big opportunities to make sure that people can get to where they need to be when they need to be there.
25 years is a long time to sort of judge the outcome of this. What will we see that shows the value of this in the short term?
I think the short term is having that collective power and coming together and actually really driving that agenda forward and making sure that we are being heard by government as much as anything. I think particularly in the north we haven't been, we've been left behind for a long time.
David Skaith ending that report. Now, two mums who lost loved ones to suicide are part of a team behind a new website called Speak Their Name, aimed at supporting others going through similar trauma. Anna Scott lost her daughter Ellen in 2019 and Karen Sykes lost her husband Ian in 2015 and her daughter Beth a few years later. I'm pleased to say they both join me now. Ladies, welcome. Anna, just explain, if you would, what sort of impact suicide has had on your life?
It's had an enormous impact. It's something that we didn't see coming, we didn't expect, and it just quite literally changed my life beyond recognition.
And Karen, do you find when people know you've gone through this trauma, people are reluctant to talk to you? They feel uncomfortable in talking about it?
That's some people do, but then it also opens conversation to other people that when they know that you're bereaved to suicide, that they feel that they can then have that conversation that they've lost somebody to suicide or they know somebody that's going through it. So it's a double-edged sword really, but I think sometimes it does open up conversations when people feel connected to you, that you may understand what they may be going through.
Why is it, Anna, so important to talk about this issue?
Because talking about suicide can actually help prevent suicide. There's lots of myths surrounding suicide and it is still quite a taboo subject. Talking about it and normalising those conversations is really, really important.
I know you two have come on tonight, you want to talk about it, but importantly you want to raise awareness. Tell me how you're doing that, raising that awareness.
We were first involved with the Yorkshire Speak Their Name Suicide Memorial Quilt, and that's then enabled us to become involved in a national project around the Speak Their Name Suicide Memorial website, which allows anybody that's bereaved to suicide to create a memorial page for their loved one. But also in doing that and remembering people that we've lost to suicide, it also is part of suicide prevention, because if you're bereaved to suicide, you're at higher risk. And again, it's a different platform, and all our loved ones were not just statistics, easy for me to say. They are people, and remembering them is important, and speaking their name is vital.
Is it easy to spot the signs that somebody is vulnerable? Did you find that with your loved ones? Were there times when you were concerned, or did you not even know that was what was going on in their minds?
There were definitely times when we were quite seriously worried about her. But even that being said, it's still the greatest shock to hear that she had actually taken her own life.
Yeah.
And for me that's slightly different, because with both Ian and Beth there were no indicators for me whatsoever. It was both a complete shock. But like as Anna said, regardless of whether somebody's been struggling and made numerous attempts or struggled with their mental health, I think the shock and the impact of suicide cannot be underestimated.
Okay, well, many thanks. We could talk much longer, but time's beaten us. But thank you for coming in and sharing your stories, and well done on raising awareness of the issue too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, many of the very best professional cyclists in the world have been in North Yorkshire today for Stage 2 of the Men's Tour of Britain. Stage 3 starts in Sheffield in the morning with a full day of riding in South Yorkshire, and in the afternoon the finish line is in Barnsley. Here to tell us about that and the outcome of today's Stage 2 is Paul Ogden.
Yes, let me tell you first that it has not been a good day for our Olympic mountain bike champion today on Stage 2 of the Tour of Britain. Even a rider with Tom Pidcock's ability can sometimes be tired. Today, on the approach to that stage finish on Redcar Seafront, Pidcock's Olympic Tour de France summer and last week's Mountain Bike World Championships look to be catching up with him. Tom and his team lost touch with the front of the race, which was won today by Welshman and the new race leader, Stevie Williams. Pidcock now finds himself 12 minutes behind overall. And tomorrow is our day. Many of the very best professional male cyclists in the world will be riding all day tomorrow through South Yorkshire from Sheffield to Barnsley, including Tom Pidcock, Olympic mountain bike champion, plus the cousins Ben and Connor Swift, Jake Scott, Ben Turner, amongst others. Let's have a look at the glorious route map we've got to look forward to. After the start near Sheffield's Winter Gardens, in the first hour of racing alone tomorrow, we get 2 9% gradient King of the Mountains climbs. Long Lane first, just above Loxley, followed by Ooty Bridge, or Jawbone Hill, as it's known. That was climbed by the Tour de France in 2014. Then the riders race through Chapeltown, Wath-upon-Dearn, Swinton, Maltby, towards the only intermediate sprint of the day, which is in Tick Hill, just before 1 o'clock. Then the route skirts west of Doncaster via Conisborough and all those lovely lanes around Brodsworth, and after Royston, Darton and Penistone, we get the real finale, a potentially decisive climb for the whole Tour of Britain race overall. Hound Hill up to Worsborough Common. It averages nearly 7%. And then there's a final sting in the tail right in Barnsley town centre. The last 800 metres of tomorrow's stage, it drags up Old Mill Lane into County Way to the finish line itself around 3 o'clock. But do get there much earlier if you want to get close to the action.
Thanks, Oggy. Should be a great day for cycling enthusiasts tomorrow. Meanwhile, at the Paralympic Games in Paris, there was cycling disappointment today for York's Ben Watson. The defending men's C3 time trial champion missed out on the medal positions by less than 2 seconds, despite being fastest on the road at the first checkpoint. And I'm afraid there was similar emotions being felt in the Yorkshire corner of the Great Britain para table tennis squad tonight. Todmorden Megan Shackleton was knocked out at the quarter-final stage of the women's Class 4 tournament. In a fierce battle against her opponent from Serbia, Shackleton put up a stubborn fight but lost by 3 games to 2. Now, life in our armed forces is well known for its camaraderie, and for some, when they hang up their boots, they can struggle to adapt to life on Civvy Street. But now an army instructor based in Harrogate has created a charity to help veterans cope with loneliness. Paul Goodwin, who's been in the army for more than 16 years, created Resurgence Air Sports with a friend last year. Jacob Tomlinson took to the skies to find out a little bit more.
I'll be home, I'll check the weather forecasts, make sure it's safe, to make sure nothing's going on in the local area. And then once I'm set, I'll just get my gear ready, take the paramotor out of the garage, grab the wing, and I'm fortunate enough to have a field that I've been allowed to fly on. Yeah, I used to feel nerves, not so much anymore. I just feel happy to get flying. Life's worries just kind of dissipate. You feel like you're in your own realm.
Meet Paul Goodwin. After joining the army at 16, he's gone on to serve in countries all over the world, including Iraq and Afghanistan. Now he's an instructor at the Army Foundation College in Harrogate. But when he's not doing that, you'd probably find him, well, in the sky.
I think flying's always been something I've wanted to do, you know. I remember being a kid watching a cartoon called Super Ted, and I remember one of my very early memories jumping off the couch with a cape on, thinking maybe I can fly, you know.
At any point, do you get scared? Do you get nervous about what it is you're doing?
So there's adrenaline and there's you know, euphoria, but it's enjoyable, the enjoyable type, not the petrifying type.
Following the tragic death of one of Paul's fellow soldiers, he and his friend Tom decided to create a charity with an important mission in mind.
The army can be like Never Neverland. It's great, you get looked after, and you know, you can do a marvellous career in the military. And I think sometimes it's difficult when you leave to keep that adventurous spirit, that camaraderie. And with the people we're helping at the moment, we found that we've re-injected that into them. So the charity's purpose is to fund veterans and servicemen and women into recreational aviation.
When I left the military, it's a lonely place. I just felt like I lost everything. And as soon as I started meeting guys who are doing this flying. I've made a new bond of friends. Feels like I've got purpose again. Feels like I'm part of something. I'm going to say it's changed my life. I'm always constantly checking the weather apps now. Check if I can get down the field and go for a fly.
What does the future look like for Resurgence Air Sports?
If we carry on going the way we're going, I think, the sky's the limit.
Nice one. If I'm not much mistaken, that was a bit of stratocumulus in there.
It was indeed.
Do we still measure cloud cover in eighths?
In octaves, we do. So there was 3/8 of cloud there, Phil.
Right, and I think you might have to furnish me with another boring statistic that he's been banging on about all day.
Well, it's not along the lines of the llamas and alpacas. It's not award-winning, but I thought it was really interesting. This summer, if we transported the summer we've just had, where we've had normal temperatures, into the 1960s, it would have been the warmest summer of the decade.
Wow.
And that just goes to show how the climate's warming and how we're getting
We've all got used to it, haven't we?
We have,
Absolutely,
because
yeah.
nobody would say that this summer was warm.
No.
But if you planted it back then, it would have been.
And it's warming up again as we head towards the weekend.
It is.
Yeah.
You're a bit of a weather anorak, I can tell. But anyway, Gordale Scar.
It's my Scouts weather badge coming back.
Right, OK. Well, you'll know Gordale Scar in Mallandale then, because it's a beautiful spot. A lot of cloud there today. And our Derek was up at 6:20 this morning in York and just caught that rainbow in a passing shower. Thanks for sending that in. If you've got any pictures you want to send to me, the addresses are on your screen right now. So there's a lot of weather to get through in the next couple of minutes. It's very changeable. Tomorrow will be overcast and windy. There'll be some drizzle in places, and we are picking up a strong northeast wind. Now, we've had record heat across Europe in the last 24 hours, but that will cool down as it comes across the North Sea, condensing into cloud, and that's why we'll see a lot of cloud tomorrow. But there's every hope on Friday we'll see blue skies and sunshine. So as I say, there's a lot going on at the moment. We've got patchy outbreaks of rain showing up on the radar picture, so it's a bit of a miserable evening to come, especially across parts of West and South Yorkshire. Then another clump of rain coming in from the North Sea, so it's a really mixed night. The wind picks up. We'll see temperatures coming in at around about 11 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow's high water times very windy along the coast. Scarborough 6:11, Farley at 6:23. So that overnight rain soon clearing, but we will be left with a legacy of cloud. There'll be some drizzle, mistiness and hill fog. A bit of brightness possible, but it does look as though it's going to be overcast. Quite humid air. Temperatures around 18 Celsius. Little to change things through Thursday evening, but there's that back edge. That should bring sunny skies on Friday. That's the forecast.
Nothing wrong with being an anorak, you know.
No, there isn't.
Wear it with pride.
Indeed.
That's what I say. Thank you, Paul. I'll be back with a late bulletin at 10:30, but from Paul, myself and all the team who put this brilliant programme together, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening. Good night.